Hey everybody, welcome to Tailboard Talks Firefighter Podcast. I'm Chris, and today we got a real special episode, real special conversation talking with Joe Galli. He's my good friend, union president, and making some serious moves on the state level. Recently, Joe proposed and organized a resiliency committee through our state union, the AFFI. We're going to talk a good deal about that, as well as just kind of catch up, trade stories, and have a good time. Hope you guys liked it, and don't worry, Joe Galli will be back on the show several more times. If you like it, stay tuned for that. Talk to you guys soon, and let's get into this one. Here comes the intro. Skip forward 30 seconds if you want to get right to the episode. This is the Tailboard Talk Podcast, the best health, wellness, and lifestyle resource for the fire service. We're using stories, lessons, and tips from the front lines to give a realistic view of what the job can do to us and how we can make it out alive. I'm Chris Morella, a firefighter since 03, medic since 05, full-time since 08, and promoted to lieutenant in 20. I'm also a personal trainer and strength coach, and I'm here to give you the best information and host the best discussions to make us capable and durable, both on the job and away from it. So grab a heater, steal some fancy creamer from First Shift, and let's go chat. So let's kick this off, man. This is, first of all, we're going to cover maybe a fraction of the ground today that we're ever going to cover here, because you and I have had some of the most fantastic conversations at the table, on the Tailboard Talk, obviously. Everywhere. We've gone back and forth, usually pretty in agreement with stuff, and we amplify what the other one's saying, and then it turns into a ridiculous level of amplification, either
Always.
Volume or content, and then we pick a new topic. So we've covered some ground, dude. And I kind of gave you the carte blanche on today of I really feel like you've, like, maybe I'm just recognizing it more, maybe it's more public. The past 2.5 maybe years, you've really gotten out in the world. Like you have big aspirations now. You're trying for stuff that's outside of our local. You're involved in far more state level stuff, which is just like above and beyond what I would imagine someone from our department doing just a couple of years ago, right? Yeah. So let's just do a quick thing. Just introduce yourself as the formal title as His Excellence, the Union President, right? And then I don't know if you heard other episodes. Like, I hate doing backstory stuff. Flashback stuff, super boring for me, right? So just give me a little bit of love. Just tell me who you are, what you're doing, and we'll kind of go from there, man.
Yeah. Lucky for us, I hate backstories too. So.
Yeah, dude.
Now, Joe Galli, president of IFF Local 439. 20-year firefighter. 16 of that 20 has been on the executive board in some way or another. Like anybody else, you just raise your hand or somebody encourages you, and then you say, okay. And whether it's fire investigation or TRT or water rescue or so whatever little niche you find yourself into, it either sticks or it doesn't stick. Yeah. And for me, the union side stuck, and here I am 16 years later, and it's just been a lot of consistent time. You mentioned that the last 2.5 years, I think that's all due because of just the body of work finally catches up to you at some point. You just realize, like, you look back and you see all the track that was laid. You know what I mean? Yeah. You don't notice it at the time, Yeah.
So you've gone through you've risen through the ranks to what you've become now as a union president, but you've played the role of everybody but a promoted officer at this point, by your own choosing, not because of anything else. And that's always been something we've never really talked about, though, is like you had to make a decision at some point and say, like, I'm deep in this acting officer life. Like, promotion is a eventuality if I continue down this path, right? And then, like several natural and highly effective leaders we have just chose not to, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not a flippant choice by any means, but what was what you weighed when you determined if you wanted to continue down the officer route or really embed yourself? Because it's difficult to do both, right? Or embed yourself in the union side and really become a leader on the union side.
Yeah, I think it is. It can be difficult. I think it just takes the timing plays in, the character, the circumstances, the players of the game.
Sure.
All of that is an amalgamation of how you're created in this space. And for me, I can tell you that I came on this job extremely motivated. I got out of the Marine Corps, and if I'm honest, I achieved a lot there. I got to the rank of sergeant, which wasn't an easy task to do in my MOS. I got a few awards and decorations that I'm proud of, but
Yeah, absolutely.
All that kind of like at the time when you're just a 20-some-year-old kid, it kind of like makes you feel like validated, you belong. Well, then I come into the fire service fresh out of that, and I'm ready to go. Yeah. And I get a lot of people, nudging me like, hey, take the next test and this and that. And I felt like at the time it was just like a lot of pushing early on. And I'm like, well, I just really want to breathe. I want to enjoy this. I want to be in this occupation and kind of just see where it takes me. And at the time, if I'm honest, the only really thing that was really appealing to me was the water rescue team. I really wanted to be it wasn't a water rescue team, it was a dive team, right?
Sure.
Back then.
Yeah.
And we've evolved since. But that was kind of like, that's where I wanted to be. And then lo and behold, through a lot of number of situations, I was an actor for a long period of time. It wasn't until I got my engineer assignment at Threes 8 or 9 years ago that I just said, if I'm going to be a good engineer, I'm going to put this acting stuff aside. And I had never closed the door on getting promoted, but as I moved through the union, I really just started to cement the idea that I enjoyed representing the members. I felt like that's where I was really effective, whereas the rat race of the promotion side, it better than most. It can be really just a grind. There's a lot of work that you got to put into it. And frankly, I just didn't want to work. No, I'm just kidding.
Now we know.
Now you know the story. No, it was just, it was basically, it wasn't a day that I just said, that's it, I'm not going for it.
Sure. Sure.
And I'm not a big believer in just closing doors for good. This is not saying that I'm testing next time or anything like that.
I don't know, man.
Although this list made me regret it, but get Kurt on that list. Yeah.
He flirted with the idea for a hot second, and then it was like dude, you could totally, that would be great for you to go back to medic school, and he's like, do you think they would actually promote me and then send me back to medic school? I'm like, 100%.
Yeah.
You'd be back in there before you got your badge pin on you.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because he's next. He's got to be next. Or is he a driver? He's next for a driver, I think.
He's got to be so close.
Yeah. He's not the official. He's a fill-in at fours, but he's next, I think.
That's right.
Dude, that's so funny. You, and to your credit too, you are one of the, only a handful of dudes come to mind where people are like, why didn't Joe get promoted? Why didn't he pursue that? And then you look at the amount of the ungodly amount of work that you put in to the union side of things. You're like, well, thank God he didn't get promoted because something would suffer, and for you to pick what you're truly passionate and effective at, I think is more of a testament to do that. Because I certainly understand what you're saying. Like, there's a ton of pressure to get promoted. Like, that is the career path. And that's one thing that we've talked about in our department specifically. We're like, until recently, probably 4 or 5 years ago, when more programs for blue shirts and engineers started emerging, there is either you are on the promotion path from the day you get off probation, or you're kind of in the way.
Yeah,
100%. And you're either doing that, or you're just gonna go make that cut and get out of the way. Let people who are motivated and want to contribute be a part of this thing. And I think a lot of people accept that, and I did for 10 years. I was really good at skills. I was the hands team dude. Mm-hmm. And I could make your cot fast, and I could get you back in service fast. And any skill you wanted under the sun, I was going to nail that thing.
Yeah.
And then I remember okay, you're going to be an actor today, so run this medic call. And I can do that, And they're like, cool, you did a good job. Run this 2-car accident. I'm like, what? Can I get the cot? And they're like, no, you don't touch the cot anymore. I'm like, oh man, I'm drowning quickly.
Yeah.
It's a lot, right? So for somebody to invest in what they are passionate about, it kind of leads me to another question, and this is on topic, off topic. We both have conversations recently with someone who is deciding their career path, right? Do they want to stay where we work? Do they want to move somewhere else? And that's more of a commonality in the past 6-7 years of people coming on and be like, this just isn't what I wanted or what I thought, or, hey, I got this other opportunity. Right. And I think for a lot of those people, every time I talk to one, the one thing that always comes up is like, I'm really afraid to ask people about this because I feel like as soon as I bring this up and it's out there that I'm thinking about leaving, I'm going to be just like, screw that guy, I'm not going to waste my time with him anymore. If you want to leave, just leave, like a sour attitude almost.
Right.
And what I explained to this guy was like, that used to be a prevalent thought in guys' heads, which was like, I spent 15 years on the ambulance. Now you got to spend 15 years on the ambulance. If you're looking to better yourself by leaving, that you're taking the easy way out and you suck. Like, figure out how to hack. I hacked it. You have to hack it. Pay your dues, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Where do you think we are? And the way I explained it to him is like, that's changing. Now, the younger guys, the guys who have their heads out of their asses, that have seen the world grow and become much larger and smaller at the same time, we just want people to be happy. If it's not here, then I'd rather have you be happy not here.
100%.
I'd rather have that than you be here and be a miserable ass. Where do you think we are in that transition? Because you've seen the full gamut of that. You came on with some hard people.
Yeah.
And now you have the new people we're bringing on today. Where do you see us in the arc of that, and where do you see like the biggest changes socially within our fabric here?
Yeah, maybe depending on what analogy I guess we're using is in the middle of that arc, I suppose. I think that's where we are. I think we're literally acknowledging that it's a thing, which was hard for us to acknowledge because there's so many of us that were deniers to some degree, like the blaming of millennials. I think that's slow and sloppy, and it's the laziest accusation you can make.
Yeah.
Because every generation has blamed the next one for why something's not working, and my theory has always been, well, you raised them, so why don't you look a little bit, do some introspection, and see like, well, what could I have been better at to provide something for these people, to give them. And that's kind of my philosophy lately, is meeting people where they are. Nice. It's something that I think that as I'm out meeting other locals right now, and as I'm working on this resiliency committee and things like that, my biggest mantra has become meeting people where they are.
Nice.
And because if you sit around and expect people to come to you with their problems, then it's just going to be more of the same, right?
Yeah.
And going back to where we're at in this, we're acknowledging that it's a thing right now, that this next generation is just different than we are, and we were different than the one previously.
Yeah.
But what are we going to be? Are we going to be the people that just continues to blame others because we're now kind of like, well, why aren't you sticking around? And this job is cool to me. Why isn't it cool to you?
Yeah. I wish it came from that. I really wish that was the root of it a lot of times, of like, man, you're going to miss something great. But I really do feel like most of it is like almost jealousy of like, well, I didn't take that opportunity. And so now you're stuck here too, jerk. Like, how dare you take advantage of what you think is right if I, for whatever reason, didn't take advantage of it? Why should you benefit?
Yeah, that's a good observation too. I dig that, because here's the deal. I mean, this generation is smarter. They're more educated.
Sure.
That's the real thing, man. When I came on, hardly anybody had a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
Hardly anybody. And then when you found out you can get promotion points, people ran out and just got their,
hey man, I got a sport management degree. Okay.
Well, but it was a checkbox. It wasn't like I cared to educate.
Right.
These people are coming on before they got the job, meaning they invested themselves in that education.
Right.
That's why they're smarter. I should say they're more educated, right?
Yeah.
I suppose that's the proper way to put it. But we got guys that come on with a realization that EMS is a bigger part. So the people we're getting aren't as jaded as some of us were when we're like coming on the job going, oh, I'm a firefighter.
Right.
Well, you're going to an ambulance. No. I'm sorry. I took the firefighter test, you know, but nowadays people are coming on the job and they're like, it's an ambulance job that fights fire sometimes.
Right.
They already know that. So it's pretty insulting to think that like we're going to teach them something about it, right? They're coming in with this education and the science behind a lot of things that we didn't have science for. Cancer rates are way higher, suicide rates, substance abuse, There's so many dangers about our job that were lurking in the shadows, masked, just not, maybe they were hiding in plain sight, or maybe we just had no honest idea that these were sitting there. But they're killing firefighters. Well, now you go to a job fair and some of these people know it's on the news now. Like, it's in their social media streams. We're sharing that information. Guys that are maybe in an Explorer program or this and that, they're getting an early taste of like what it's about. We're going to give them more information, and they're going to evaluate that information and process that information a lot better than we ever did. I think I don't want to speak for you, but like I think you come from that same mindset of like, well, I'm already there. I'm gonna do this job,
right?
And so you're not steering me away with these dangers
Facts.
of the job. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Well, you touched on it quickly. We're kind of revolving around it in an organic sense, but I sent you a list of topics before, but I think it's only natural we talk about the Resiliency Committee, because I really think that's something that's really lighting you up right now in general, right? Mm-hmm. It's kicking off. It's formed. It's rocking and rolling shortly here. Hit the backstory on it real quick, and let's just kind of go into some of the things we've talked about, main point wise, and what you're trying to accomplish with this Resiliency Committee.
Yeah, it's surreal to me, actually. If I'm 100% honest, I ebb and flow with emotions on this because it's a labor of love, but it's something that I think was, frankly, hiding in plain sight for all of us. I'm just the dummy that said, "Hey, look, we should do this." But it kind of goes back to what are firefighters good at, and that is mitigating a crisis after it's already a crisis, right? Yeah. And that speaks to why we have things like peer support, right? And we're getting so good at that. We're establishing programs in departments all over the country. Our AFFI District Vice President, Matt Olson, I give him tremendous credit in getting that pushed on a national scale because he flew to other states to show the program that he built here. But that's addressing somebody that's already in that crisis, that's already gone to the center of excellence, that's crying out for help, saying, I need that help now. Maybe they've already slipped into alcoholism. Maybe they've already gone through a domestic dispute or a divorce. Some sort of issue has already brought them to their rock bottom or near rock bottom, and we got to get them out. Well, this is just the mindset of how do we prevent that? We're always going to need the peer support. That's never going to go away. We're just like you're always going to need a fire department. But why wouldn't you have a fire prevention bureau, right? And that's what this is. It's the prevention bureau. So again, not to beat this phrase up, but it's meeting people where they are. It's finding out where these members reside in their own heads, in their own fitness, mentally, physically, all of the above. Yeah. And it's encouraging them to keep seeking help. We don't go to counselors, or we don't go to doctors after you've broken your arm, and that's the sole time we ever see a doctor. We go there to as preventative medicine. Well, now we're learning that firefighters, when they get on the job, should be seeing a counselor from day one, so that counselor understands who they are. Sure. Will we get there tomorrow? I don't know, but we're learning that these are the things that can really benefit guys in our job. And then there's, the fitness side of it. Being more resilient means, physically able to take the job. Yeah. The mental side of it, but it's ultimately an all-encompassing thing is teaching us to bend, not break, and even when you're bending, you're going to need help. And that's what, we're encouraging people to do is, just keep taking one step forward towards progress in furthering your career and making yourself more resilient to the dangers that present themselves. It's not just about putting on PPE and going into a house fire. Right. That PPE could be building your mental health up, your behavioral health, your physical fitness, all the above, So
do you view the Resiliency Committee as an educational platform where you guys will be putting out stuff through the union, through the international and and basically providing resources, right? It's a roadmap or a contact point for a lot of people who maybe don't want or have peer support, but they have this union-backed, union-developed thing that they can rely on.
Yeah, all the above. Yeah, everything you just said. And I told you I ebb and flow with emotions because it's like, oh my God, this is happening and this is great. And then there's other times where I'm just excited and I'm like so motivated and I'm ready to go. One of my moments where I was questioning everything was as I'm about to go to Ottawa, Canada for the IFF convention, there's a lot of things that have been coming out. The 100 Club, which is a separate entity outside the AFFI. They started in Chicago. It's a non-for-profit, private non-for-profit. And they've been involved in helping families cope with the tragedy and losses of firefighters. And they've evolved into developing resiliency programs and so forth. The IFF has now built a resiliency program. I've taken that course. It's fantastic. I think it's amazing. I started to get to a point where I'm like, well, now is this idea that I've had in my head for about 2 years now, is this just a duplication of effort?
Sure.
And I go to Canada and I'm talking to, he's a director of health and wellness for the IFF. I don't know his official title, Scott Richardson. And as I'm explaining all this to him, he's like, well, this is great that state associations are willing to put forward this effort. And he was kind of encouraging in that sense. But the real moment came when we were on the convention floor and we're voting on whether or not we're going to put money towards train the trainer programs and everything else. And we throw money at everything, man. Our dues money goes to so many different places. Yeah. And frankly, so many great things. But when it came to this program, everybody said, well, you know what? Instead of paying dues, let's move this to a grant-funded program. And it basically just said, like, we're recognizing this is important, but we need to step it down a notch. And then over the next few years, we'll start putting this as a bigger thing. Well, that just said, like, I'm not going to wait around. The state association, the AFFI, doesn't wait around.
Right.
Our members deserve to have these things in place now, and we can respond now. We can be there now. We can start this process now. And I think one of the other good examples is that when you want to make the case for being able to build your own program, we know Illinois firefighters are different than Missouri firefighters and Florida firefighters and California firefighters. So being able to take our association and pinpoint and direct that will go a lot further for the legitimacy to our members, right? They can feel the legitimacy when it's, one of us coming to them and not, hey, in 3 weeks, the IFF will send you a link to a webinar.
Right.
And,
Right. So one of the, first of all, I'm as equally not dumbfounded, but awestruck by this whole process as well, because it really was one of those things where you started talking about it and then you sent around a draft to a few people. And then it was just very surreal to see this, like, hey, I read this at the Station 3 table 2 weeks ago and Joe is up there now on the state level and it's happening. I was like, that is so crazy. Now, important part about this, I think, just to talk about briefly, is I've expressed to you that through dealing with Ryan Maines and the Run for Our Lives thing and through Devote December, Spring for Change, I got about that much in me before I start to feel like a real fraud in this space. Like,
100%.
Like, I got enthusiasm and I have the drive, but when it gets past, like, hey, I can facilitate, I can point you in the right direction, I can help, I feel like I'm just drowning because I'm not a counselor. I'm not even well-versed in going to counseling myself yet, And so for me to be like touting the mental health flag and touting the resiliency flag away from fitness, it's very uncomfortable for me, Now, to that end, I think the benefit of what the Resiliency Committee is just that. It's a committee. Now, it's not the Joe Galli show. Joe Galli thinks we should all be resilient, and he's going to tell you how. It's like, hey, I'm accumulating this group of this enormous group, a really big group of people comparatively, right? Or relatively. And all of them are going to bring some awesome stuff. And we're going to, from our peers now, we're going to give you some ideas of what's worked for us and what we think is value to be endorsed and used by your locals. And I think that's a great way to do it, because when you and I talk at the table and we get that awkward feeling of like, ooh, man, I'm kind of out of material on this mental health front, people can see that they can see when you're stretching and when you're starting to make stuff up and reach for those truths of what you've heard and try to regurgitate that as truth, right?
So true.
And man, this resiliency committee is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So it's so funny that you even said it that way, because last night Cam and I were talking and she's just like, I can't believe this is happening, or whatever. And I was like, me neither. And I was just, I got into this mode where, cause if I'm guilty of one major crime, it's, I just don't talk about work stuff at home.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's a real firewall with me, and
yeah.
And this is just something that it's just sort of fallen out of my mouth, you know. And I'm like, I got 16 people on this committee. It's the second largest committee in the state, next to the PEC. And I'm like this is a big deal. And I said, you won't believe the people that are on it. Annette Zapp from Lyle Woodridge, Andy Scott from Plainfield. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Monsters.
Jim Weirda. I mean, I could name all these guys. I don't want to miss anybody, but like, there are some true all-stars on this thing.
Yeah.
And ones that you know well, you know, and you know, like I've heard you and Kurt talk about it a couple of times, you know, mowing the lawn or driving my car, and you're like, yeah, you know, I think it's Plainfield or somewhere like that. It is 100%. Let the record show on this podcast that I'm telling you, Andy Scott from Plainfield gets all the credit from the Plainfield guys for establishing that program where they do morning mobility.
Nice.
And you know, it's kind of that. It sets the tone. They built this program where until 9:30 a.m. you are not allowed to go do a business inspection. You're not allowed to go to the store and get groceries. You're not allowed to go outside of running calls. You got to run the calls. Emergencies come first.
Probably do that.
Yeah. Go on the calls. Yeah. But it gives them the opportunity to focus on that mindfulness, that mobility. It really sets the tone, you know. And I don't want to geek out too much, and I obviously don't want to stretch this podcast out for an eternity, but I listened to a really great one called The Legacy of Speed by Malcolm Gladwell.
Nice.
You know him?
Yep. Hates golf. Yeah.
Hates golf, which is my spirit animal right there, man. So he did this one called Legacy of Speed, and it's all about the San Jose State track team. And famously in Mexico City at the Olympics, Tommy Smith and John Carlos raised a gloved fist in the air, and it was in solidarity of civil rights, and they were ostracized. The backlash was tremendous. Lee Evans is the world record holder. He ran the next day, and he was so anxiety ridden that he couldn't, as the coach Bud Winter said, I couldn't even send you down the block for a gallon of milk. Jeez. Like he was just a wreck. So he put him in this state of like meditation and calmed him down. He fell asleep for 2 hours, woke up, broke the world record, you know. But this Bud Winter kind of revolutionized the focused breathing, mindfulness, and all of that. And he did it through Vietnam. They were crashing all sorts of planes. The pilots were freaking out. They had a crazy high crash rate. Yeah. And he learned that if he took the pilots aside and they did breathing exercises every morning before all the missions, their crash rate went just the rate of crashing plummeted. You know what I mean? And it was just because these guys were more focused. And Bud Winter took that and applied it to sprinters. Yeah. And this whole thing that they talk about in the thing is, why can't it apply to so many things? And that got me working my brain going, look at our job. Look at our job. Yeah. You know, just taking a simple like hour of the morning saying, we're not going to screw with you right now. Yeah. We're going to encourage that you focus on, you know, breathing techniques, mindfulness, mobility. Yeah. Go in and do these things for 1 hour. We won't interrupt. The calls might, but we won't. Right. That's a big deal. I mean, that's an investment in your personnel. You know, that's a chief in Plainfield saying, I believe in this too. Yeah. And, you know, to hammer that home, he actually puts a camera. They have teleconferencing stuff, and he has a camera, and they have a screen, and you could see every station engaged in it every morning, and he's doing it too. Man, so,
it sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's sometimes I think, not to sound jaded or pessimistic, you know, but you know, sometimes I sit there and go like, well, I probably won't see it in my lifetime, but I don't know. And you don't know until you try.
Well, and that's what I was just thinking was like, I would also never expect to read a draft at the Station 3 table and see you at a podium 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
It's just dude, I can't tell you the number of people I've told, if you want something, just ask for it.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example.
What did you say?
Ridiculous example.
No, too many people
take their first no as a never.
Yeah, that's such a
Dude,
good one, man. That's
it's
such
so
a good
crazy.
One.
Like,
yeah.
So I'll give you an example, and people listening won't be able to. I'll explain it, but Station 7, okay, has that conference room in the southeast corner of the building, right
in the sun.
Right in the sun.
Yeah.
When they built this station, they put blinds on the east wall, not the south wall. Okay, so it's a glass cube.
Yeah.
There's no blinds on the south wall. So every single morning, for 6 months, the sun bypasses the east blinds and goes right in the south blinds and cooks that room. I mean, it's just a magnifying glass. That was built in 2008,
yeah.
Right? I got up there for 2 or 3 months while somebody was hurt 3 years ago. And I said, why aren't there blinds on this wall? And they're like, well, nobody's asked for them. I'm like, can we put them in? They're like, yeah, pick them out. Dude, 2 weeks later, there were blinds on the south wall, and you could use that room a majority of the day. And so every time because I live right there, every time I'm like, those are my blinds right there.
Yeah.
And every day they're at a different level of height, meaning that someone's in there doing something, And I was like, and so I told him, like, just ask, dude.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so easy to be like, stupid room doesn't have freaking blinds on it. I can't use it. It's too bright in there.
Yeah.
Like,
And don't be afraid to go back, Like
yeah.
you said, that's why I love that saying that you had on there. It's if you get told no, it's that simple, like, okay, we had a retreat.
Yeah.
Rethink our strategy.
Right.
Rethink whether or not we sold the argument,
Yeah.
and then try again. Maybe it's not even with that same person. Maybe it's with somebody else,
It probably will be.
It probably will be. Right?
Yeah. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. And that's not what I want to do. I have to do. I have to get back home. We have a lot more to talk about.
Cool.
Like, we didn't even talk about the entire conversation we've had about alcohol, and it's very threatening removal from the fire service, like from certain events in the fire service. Extremely off-putting to some people and very, very threatening to some people. But we've had some really good talks about that. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the role you're pursuing at the state level besides the Resiliency Committee. We got a lot to go over.
Cool.
Right? So this is one of several.
Part 1.
Oh, yeah. No, not even chapter 1. This is like
Right
paragraph 1, right? So you'll be back, Joe Galli, I promise. And I think after this, people are going to want to hear much, much more. And I'm pumped because we have some good times, dude. So I'm excited to share these good times we have with people.
Yeah.
Do you want to leave with anything? Just whatever you want to close with. Obviously, it's temporary close. It's more of a see you later, more than a goodbye, right? But in preparing to meet with your resiliency committee and preparing to build your standing still at the state level, pretend you're talking to one of our 30-plus new hires with less than 2 years on. What do you want these people to know?
Oh, man. Yeah. I don't know if there's one thing, but, I think the biggest thing is, I think the biggest thing for me right now is trying to instill a pride in craft. So long have we had certain positions on the job that are like maybe synonymous with putting your feet up, or you get to a certain station and it's going to be this kind of lifestyle. We have this new, what is it? A third of our fire department right now is under 5 years.
Yeah.
A little over a third of our members currently
So
is
that's
less than 5 years.
A third of 140 people, essentially.
Yeah. And they're coming on with all the motivation in the world, and it's up to us, the 2/3, to not be jaded, to not, for me as a driver, I don't want to be looked at as my first driver. I'm not going to name drop, but he was an
Right.
old codger and everything bothered him and everything sucked. And, he looked very unhealthy.
Yeah.
He looked tremendously unhealthy. I worried about him.
Yeah.
He welcomed death.
Yeah.
He said
Even that
out
disappointed
loud.
him.
Yeah, I think I just outed him. But no, it's one of those things where redefine the job the way you want it to look to these younger members. And to me, it's that pride and craft.
Yeah.
To me, I take tremendous. I make all the jokes about cones. It's no joke, by the way. It's no joke.
Yeah.
No, but it's that pride and craft. I put a straight line down on the road lines, but when people come up and say, "Hey, nice cones," that means something.
Yeah, and you're like,
No.
they better be nice because it's stolen from Quint too.
And I
They're
stole
brand
from
new.
Quint too. And they're looking at you, Debbie. No, it's just that pride and craft in whatever you're doing. Like whether it's you as a lieutenant, you're constantly. I mean, you're assigned to an ambulance, but every time I see you on an engine, you're checking the box to go check with that guy and say, we got a newer guy or something like that. Let's what do you need? What do you need from me? It's my job to make sure you're trained up and everything else. And it's being straightforward with them. Like this job is going to be hard. We're going to be hard on you, and we're going to have fun doing it. And it's like I said, there's 100 things that I could go over with a new guy on the job, but I think it's more of a cry to us, the older ones that are saying, "Hey, let's make sure that they want to be here. Right?
Yeah.
Let's make sure that they understand that I love this job. So if you don't love it, it's my fault. Like I'm not showing you something that
Yeah,
So
I like it, man.
yeah,
It's perfect, and it's something we've echoed time and time again with such a large number of new people we have. Is like, you are going to be in a position to, truthfully, they are in a position to mold this department in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And it starts from day one, and especially with all the echoes of the stuff that happened to us 15 years ago.
Right.
And directly to me and my group of hires, with threatening of layoffs and that whole
Right.
thing. Right. It's easy to look at a guy like from my generation or older and be like, they're telling me these things, all these bad things that happen. There's a good chance those are going to happen again. So I'm going to adopt what they're putting out there.
yeah,
And so, yeah, I've told these guys, like, that happened to me. That didn't happen to you. And I'm giving you this perspective with a positive spin. So there's no reason for you to take it as a negative one. So take what's happening to you, inform your opinion, and move forward with it.
yeah, yeah. It's up to us to empower them too, to have these decisions, and take ownership, right?
Yeah.
Like a 5-year guy on the job. It's up to us to make them feel empowered enough to where they have as much stake and as much ownership in that firehouse, and that they're not always looked at as, you're just a younger guy on the job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe in part 2 or something like that, remind me, and I'll tell you about Boston, 2012. That was a trajectory change in me. It changed my whole perspective on the fire service for the better. And to this day, it's so simple, but it's about.
Hold on. All right. We'll leave it there.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll leave it there.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
a
gonna
good
leave it
one,
there. Part 2.
All right, Joe. Man, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man.
All right, dude. We'll talk soon.
All right.